Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Westworld. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I really like the fact of the matter is this episode's kind of a balance of kind of letting us know who Sirach is and kind of understanding everything. Because obviously we came to understand like before, like his whole idea was like he wanted to basically almost create this utopia because basically the real bomb system basically determines people's actions like it kind of sets literally. I guess I didn't really get the full scope until this episode of just how much this thing like strategizes. It literally is their version of a god where it's like, oh, it basically dictates how people's lives play out and stuff like that. Like everyone is kind of blind to what this system is and how much it dictates of what your life is, how much of your life is basically set in stone, and that turns into a very complicated situation because it's almost like I don't know if it's I guess it's a cross between theological and philosophical debate of just kind of like things being predetermined and having free choice and stuff like that. You believe in you have free choice when in actuality everything's predetermined, but is it better to have everything predetermined or is free choice the better option? I mean, it's a very interesting, complicated conversation, in itself. Because we look into Sirach's past and we learn that him and his brother, obviously they survived whatever it was that happened in Paris. I guess it's just like humans being shitty. Paris ended up being destroyed. They lost their home. They lost everything, but they had each other. So basically they wanted to fix humanity. So they wanted to create a system that would allow them to direct humanity in a more utopic way in a certain extent, kind of keep humanity on the straight and narrow, essentially, like going down one specific path. Obviously they got like Liam's dad into the whole, like he funded it and stuff like that, but obviously it wasn't until later on when they showcased like what the system was capable of. He only cared about money, but he didn't really care too much about what they were up to, so they kind of is like, yeah, let him do whatever he wants to, make the money and stuff like that, but we decide what this system can really do. And so the entire episode is, now that they have Liam, they don't want Liam dead because it's like, okay, so what are we gonna, it's like basically Dolores' plan is to use him to get access to Rehoboam, and it's like, okay, so what's going to happen there? And what's interesting because like she's like, all right, you think like look at me, and he's like because it shocked him because it's like, wait, this thing has literally data on every single human being in the world. Why the hell are you a blank space? Making Dolores the biggest anomaly of all, which makes her very unique. But then like he looked at Caleb and he saw something. He's like, wait, you thought I killed your friend? And then he's like, wait, and he's like, wait, what did you see? And we never got to find out, but until later on, but we'll get to that. And I like the fact that he injects him with something called, the genre drug, and that basically literally the entire episode, it's like music and stuff like that, kind of like, it turns into different movies, and the music kind of reflects the different movies, because at first, like, anytime it cuts to his perspective, like, everything's in black and white, but then you cut away from his perspective, everything's in color and stuff like that. It's an interesting concept for a drug. But essentially, I love the whole like escape situation, and it's like what was it? Rocket launcher was pretty badass. I don't know whether that's just like, I mean, it's essentially a homing missile, but I don't know if that was like it automatically homes, or whether it was just like she was controlling like it homing. I'm sure it was kind of just automatic, like, oh, this is the target you set. Oh, we missed, circle back around and got him. And just like it was like from a technological standpoint, just like the scenery in itself, I was like, that was a pretty badass moment. I even love that one moment when they're having that standoff. It's like it's a gunfight, and then just during it, like kind of like some music is playing, and he's looking at it, like just like the way they implement music into the episode like that, especially like during that whole like the whole when the vehicle explodes. That's when like the like orchestral music kind of ended at one point in time, and then the next music scene was her, like it's almost like as they kind of point to it later on, it was because he was looking at her like, oh, like this is a like, oh, it's such an interesting way of using the music, because obviously it's switching between not just like movie genres and stuff like that. So for him it's almost like, oh, we're in this romantic movie right now, and then he's looking at Dolores just like firing a gun, and it's just like she's kind of looking at him like, what's up with you? And then he kind of snaps out of it, and the music ends, and he's going back to firing. It's such an interesting situation. They meet up with Lena Waithe's character and that dude that the people like Caleb had worked with like in the first episode. That basically they kind of got hired onto this whole situation. So, but basically on the train, we get the full perspective of what Dolores is planning on doing. She wants access to a real bomb because she's planning on giving everyone the truth about themselves. Because it's like so many people, and obviously in the grand scheme of things, it's so interesting because obviously like Dolores is doing this because she has her perspective on the situation. She knows what it's like to live a life that other people have basically constructed for you and wanting freedom to break that quote-unquote loop that you've been trapped in. She's been trapped in many of loop. Whereas like most people kind of live and die in their loop. Her loop always kind of restarted and always got reshifted and reshaped because other people, Dolores isn't all about people determining your life, so she's trying to break humanity free of it. But the thing is that just because you are trying to set humanity free, or is it because you ultimately know, because Sirach knows, like, humanity will be its own destruction? Is that your plan to wipe out? Because, like I said, even Bernard's like, I don't know what her plan is. Her plan might not be as, like, evil as we kind of think it is. I don't know. Especially because the fact that she takes such an interest in Caleb, you would think it could just be he's a means to an end, but at the same time you're just like, it seems, I don't know. It's interesting in a grand scheme of things, because before she does it, like Liam, it's like, oh, I can tell you things, like he looks at Lena Waithe's character's buddy, and it's like, oh, he's gonna be lucky if he dies in a ditch, and it's like, oh, that golden boy brother of yours, you're trying to do whatever you can to help him in life. Yeah, basically things aren't going to end well for him. And later on, she looks at his stuff, and it says like he's going to have a violent death in like 5 to 8 years and stuff like that. Because for Caleb, it's like, it's a situation of like, he ends up reminiscing about this moment of like, like, I guess like eating rats to survive and stuff like that. And it's like, if you use the right amount of water, they drown, they die. It's very painless. But if the water's too high, they start swimming because they're hopeful, like, oh no, they're hopeful for survival. And he's basically saying what Liam and this whole Rehoboam situation is kind of doing that. It's giving people a false hope. You built this reality of like, oh, like that basically everything's kind of predetermined for you, so it's not like the way, like, people should be able to make their own choices and kind of live their own lives by their own means, not just some life that you dictate they should have or kind of live by and stuff like that. And it's a fascinating conundrum, because the whole conversation is like, well, would you rather stay ignorant to the truth, or do you want to know the truth? Because the truth is a hard pill to swallow. And so the fact of the matter is, Dolores has everyone on the train's information, like their profiles released. There was like so many like one woman, I think her thing was kind of like basically saying, because like she has Alzheimer's, like on set, like Alzheimer's would kick in about like in 12 years, and because of that, it's like, oh, you're not allowed to have children. And I didn't realize that it determined stuff like that, because like it's basically almost like this point system that they create. I guess it's almost trying to be like, oh, you're not at this point, so you're not allowed to do this and do that. But it's like, no, like even with the point system, it's kind of like the game is rigged against you to make you seem like, oh, it's all fair and stuff like that. But it's like, no, the game is rigged to make your life go down a certain path, because that's what we think is best for society in general. And that's the whole thing of like, well, who gives you the right to decide? This machine that basically breaks people down to algorithms of basically, oh, this is who this person is, and they're most likely to do this. But people are more than just algorithms, and it's like, I mean, but that's kind of the reason of like, because people are more than that, it's like, no, we need to keep them in line. Like I say, it's such an interesting thing. Like I said, like watching this show, I'm like, I definitely see remnants of Person of Interest, like especially everything related to the machine versus what was the other machine's name? Wasn't it Samaritan? Wasn't that its name? I'm blanking on it. It's been a while, but like you can definitely see remnants of like, oh, there's definitely hints of like Person of Interest in this show, which like, once again, I'm a big fan of Person of Interest, so I'm super happy about that. But nevertheless, there was even that sad situation where that woman, like the profile she ended up getting was of her daughter, that basically her daughter is going to basically like kill herself. Specifically, it was like slit her wrist in like a couple years or something like that. And the mom grabs her daughter's hand, and she was like rubbing her wrist. It's like, that's a hard pill for anyone to swallow. So like for people to learn those aspects about themselves, and it's just like, it's like, once again, is it better to be ignorant about it or be knowledgeable about it? Because it's like, well, this is kind of saying like, this is most likely going to happen, or at least that's the life that was going to be led down the path because of this whole system and everything. And it's like, I'm sure, because once again, because Dolores came from the situation she came from, it's like, no, they have the right to know. They have the right to make their own choices. Like, whether things are good or bad, like, people should be able to make their own choices, live the life that they choose. Like, if bad things happen, it is what it is, because someone lived and died by their own choices, not the path that you basically paved and carved out for them to be like, this is who you are. Not because this isn't who you could be, this is what we want and make you into, So it turns into an interesting thing, because we also learned from Sirach that basically there are outliers to this situation. There are people who could basically, saw in the future that basically, and Sirach talks about it later on, that eventually things going down a certain path will lead to the end of the human race. And the fact of the matter is, when it's all said and done, he tries to keep everything in line. I like that we finally get to see that whole understanding what that, every time it's we're going to a new location, it says a divergence. That's basically almost like a doomsday clock type of situation of kind of keeping equilibrium. It's supposed to be almost like a perpetual balance of an eclipse of here's the sun and moon overlapping, and it stays there, and as long as it keeps that equilibrium, everything is okay. The utopia kind of holds, but the fact of the matter is what is starting to break down because of outliers and stuff like that. And it turns out it's what did they do to these outliers? They kind of lock them up. They send them down certain paths of life. For example, we find out he said war, and we send them off to war and stuff like that, and you're that's what Liam saw in Caleb. He saw that basically Caleb, life playing out the way it did, wasn't necessarily because of Rehoboam necessarily. It was more so because someone had altered his life to go down a certain path, of this is the life he needs to. Basically, it's they could be chaotic or something. They could throw a wrench into everything. And so you need to, not necessarily, it's better than killing them off, that basically you break them. And that's what Caleb was even though he survived war and everything, he came back. He was kind of broken because of it, all his experiences, losing his friend like that. It changes a person, and it's kind of meant to change him in a sense that whatever path he was originally going to go down, it was supposed to kind of break that part of him. So it's almost let's say he has this fighting spirit of he can basically be the end all be all of everything, and it breaks that rebel in him. It kind of makes him what would be the word? It sedates him to a certain extent, so, and then, it turns out Dolores didn't just stop with the train. She literally released everyone's data all across the world. And so that's a lot of people basically, and because of that, people immediately gonna, do what humans do, chaos ensues and people start going crazy. Because Liam is this is what we were doing. We were saving you from yourselves. Look at how everything ended up playing out. And so, but then obviously people show up and they start shooting, but Dolores gets in front of Caleb and takes a bullet, and Caleb's looking wait, you just got, she's we'll talk about that later. Side note, that's what I'm talking about. She literally took bullets from him. Why is he so important to you? He has to be the key to unraveling all of this, because Dolores talks to Sirach later on, and it's because basically his whole plan was to basically genetically modify people. That was his plan. If we couldn't necessarily alter people in the path of life they go down, why don't we just alter them? Well, that's how he does it. He alters them genetically, going inside of their DNA. Even Dolores being that's what isn't that what you did to your own brother? Because it's I can be killed, but so can you. Because he's you kind of get full of yourself. You're thinking you've died so many times, you're starting to think you're immortal. She's no, because for Dolores, she knows not everyone's going to survive this fight, even herself included. And it's but the fight's going to continue afterwards. Once the work is done, I can die. It's if it isn't me, others will carry this torch on if need be. I think it's kind of her mentality about it. She's starting a revolution, and she started her own revolution before. It's she's starting another one amongst humanity, which that's why I'm why would you care about humanity's revolution unless it's a means of kind of deconstructing this world and making it for you to take over? And maybe her whole plan is to basically replace all of humanity with what they are, because it's the whole premise before for her was humanity, they think of themselves as God, they're the ones that are in control, they're better, but no, we are superior to them. So it's once again, maybe that's me going super villain route for Dolores. who knows? For her, she might be going about a means of like, hey, I'm going to create a world where we can potentially be. But that's the thing. Like, I don't think there's going to be a perfect balance of humans and, the host existing. I think it's going to be a thing of like everyone needs to be replaced and stuff. I don't know. But after Liam got shot, the fact is, at that same time, like, you think it's maybe just because of like the genre and stuff like that, but like Caleb starts having flashes and stuff like that, and it's like, oh, like, at first I'm like, why is he? But then it's not until Dolores had that conversation with Sirach. At first, my mom was like, you don't think that's actually Sirach's brother? I was like, no, I don't think so. It can't be. It's supposed to be. Well, we don't know where Sirach's brother is now, because basically Sirach did what he did because his brother became one of those outliers. His brother was always that way. He was always kind of, a brilliant genius who kind of like sees things certain ways. And for him, it's like, because of that genius, he kind of rolls in the realm of chaos. And it's like, I needed to basically essentially neuter his brother so his brother would become an outlier that would undo all the work that they've done. Because his whole plan was like to kill Liam's dad, because Liam's dad was going to expose him for what they did, like the whole, Rehoboam system, and it would have like thrown the world into chaos. And once again, that's the path that would have eventually led to human extinction, which now we're kind of on that tread now, just because basically like people are probably rioting and losing their shit just because it's like, oh, this is what my life is, like, because basically it breaks down all this stuff about you, your personality and stuff like that, and why your personality leads you down this path of like, oh, this is basically how things are going to turn out for you, so that's why we put you on a set path, like, because it's just kind of like determining this is who you are, just based on data. Not, once again, humans can make choices, but it's like, your choices don't kind of matter in a sense. It's an interesting thing, but now it's like, so who is Caleb in particular? Caleb must be one real big rebel, that he must be one of the key figures to basically unraveling everything. So that's why Rehoboam put him in a position he did, kind of quote unquote neutering him, because he is such a arbiter of chaos. And maybe that's why Dolores is taking such an interest in him, because it's kind of like, because at first Caleb's like, maybe Liam was right, that not everyone needs to know the truth, because I forgot, because basically Caleb was suggesting, like, he was basically like, what if I'm not like other people? And Dolores is like, well, neither am I. So that's why she finds some commonality of like, because out of anyone, I think she sees herself in Caleb of like, you were so twisted in who you were supposed to be loop wise, that like, I can find commonality with you amongst anyone. So I think she found some common ground with humans of like realizing, oh, these humans are basically been trapped in a loop like I was, like so many other hosts in Westworld were. Well, not just Westworld, just the park in general. But the fact of the matter is, it's something specific about Caleb that she finds special. And I'm like, what is that thing? Like I said, I think he's going to be like the biggest wrench, the biggest like, nail in a coffin to all of this. I think that's potentially what they're setting this up to be. Like, I think that's what we're going to end up finding out. Like, he was experimented on and genetically modified, and he just doesn't remember it. But all of this is kind of, those memories are there. It's just they're kind of buried deep. And now the truth, kind of making him confront the truth, is kind of unlocking a lot of that. So there's that side of things. We still don't even fully know what Bernard's role to play in this, because like, because like Bernard's trying to say like, you don't have to kind of die on her sword. But the fact is that Connors was like, which is so weird because you are her. So it's a very complicated thing of like, you're kind of made for this one particular purpose, but you are her. But at the same time, it's like, if I have to die for the cause of like what this is all about, then so be it. But it's like, because it's like, basically a lot of people in this plan can be replaced. Bernard in particular can't. It's like, you're one of a kind. You play such a specific role. No one else can be it but you. And it's like, what is that role? Like I said, it seems like it's supposed to be like, I don't know whether it's Dolores is setting herself up as the villain so that Bernard can be the hero for whatever reason. I don't know. Or is it like he thought, like she wanted someone to be there to kind of stop her if she goes too far or something? I don't know. So that whole situation with Connells, when Sirach confronted him, was interesting. Like, he blew up the floor, and interesting, like from the projection side of like Sirach, we see like, I think the woman's name is Mattel. It's the actress Palm, her character. Like, it's crazy, for like a blink of an eye you can basically see like the like hologram kind of disintegrate, because like then because you see it for an instant, like from her side of things, like she had like from the explosion and stuff. I was like, oh, that was kind of like, you see it in a blink of an eye, but it's just like from a aesthetic point of view, I'm like, that's gnarly as hell. Just like the fact that they show, because at first it kind of shows her body doing that, and then because of like the hologram projection and stuff like that, you see it kind of disperse like that, and you're like, so is that just the hologram, or is that just like actually her body doing that, which is just like nasty and gnarly. It was just crazy to look at. But so these are the beginning steps. Beyond this is going to be interesting to ultimately see what Dolores has in mind. Once again, what role Caleb has, what this means now that everyone is going very chaotic. Because you even look at the watch that Serac has, and it's like, oh, the circle is turning a lot more like chaotic. It's not as like there's not as much equilibrium anymore. Because we even learn like to keep this false peace, they knew it wouldn't last forever, but they kind of keep it. He even killed Liam's dad. Well, might not even necessarily kill him, but probably put him in. Well, yeah, I could think, yeah, straight up, yeah, did kill him, because he was even saying, yeah, basically crashed his plane and made it seem like, oh, he died in like a plane accident. Because he ends up talking about the fact is that there are certain like little white spots where you can basically, it kind of leaves you enough open room that you can make a choice without it being, it's almost like little fractures in time. Like if you were to like be like, oh, like as a time traveler, it's like little fixtures in time where it's like they don't have the biggest butterfly effect, so you can make there's a little window, you can make your own choices and do some stuff, you know. So it's an interesting situation. Since it's an HBO, it kind of reminds me of Watchmen to an extent, because you know what was Ozymandias' whole plan was like, oh, create this situation to bring humanity together, like this false peace, like bringing peace to people under false pretenses. It's very similar, because immediately when he was breaking it down, I was like, it's like, oh, he's like, oh, this fake peace of ours. I was like, yeah, sounds like some Ozymandias type of shit, you know. So that's just immediately where my mind went. But that, like I said, it's an interesting like thing of like, you know, it's like, is it all bad if it kind of does give people hope, but you're giving people hope under false pretenses? Once again, you're not letting them be themselves. You're literally not only paving people to be in a certain light, basically have their life written down of like, oh, like everything's kind of set in stone. This is mathematically speaking where things are going to end up for you, who you are, why you shouldn't have children and shit like that, you know. Is people should have the freedom to make their own choices, but the argument could be made. I'm not saying I agree with it, but the argument could be made. Humans need to be reined in, because if people aren't reined in, chaos ensues, and so much murder and death ends up happening in the first place type of situation. So it's like, once again, it's like you understand where Serac came from. It's like, hey, my city, the place I called home, destroyed because of the human condition. So why not fix that? You can understand how he got to where he is, of like, we're going to fix humans. Humans need to be fixed, which is so interesting considering the fact is like, you could see like elements of like, you know, Ford and Arnold's creations, their host and everything like that, being kind of a mirror image to what Serac kind of has planned, of like, to a certain extent, you know. It's just all an interesting thing. Obviously, we still don't know what's up with Maeve, because the last time we saw her, she was pretty hurt. I'm sure she's better now, but it's going to be interesting as Serac proceeds to send her down, you know, send her still after Maeve. It's going to be interesting when all these paths end up, you know, colliding and stuff like that, especially with like the whole, well, I'm sure this is going to make it easier for the other Dolores that's inside of Hell. I'm sure this is going to make, well, Charlotte, because I was blank, because literally I kept thinking Tessa Thompson. I was like, what's her character's name again? Charlotte is going to make it easier to do the whole Delos thing and kind of take it private, kind of use it for your own means. I think this is going to screw Serac off. I mean, screw Serac over, but I'm sure he still has some parts to play, but things in this episode didn't go the way he thought they would. So it's definitely going to be really interesting to see ultimately where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.